Today we have with us Dyti Dawn from Alivus Life Sciences. She's a dynamic leader in the field of talent management and learning and development, with over a decade of experience across diverse industries ranging from pharmaceuticals, e-commerce, and automotive manufacturing. An alum of SEM HRD and NIT Raipur, she has successfully led leadership development programs, pioneered AI driven employee engagement strategies, and championed diversity and inclusion initiatives. Her work has also been recognized by prestigious awards, including ET HCA Gold, Learning and Development Practitioner of the Year, and Silver for the Best Leadership Development Program, Pharma, at the CLO Summit. Beyond her corporate achievements, she has also published thoughtful leadership pieces on leadership humility, resilience, and behavior change. We are very thrilled to have you here with us today. And are very excited to dive into your incredible journey. To start off, Diti, you have had such a dynamic career journey, moving across corporate HR, then consulting, and now leading talent management and learning it along. Could you walk us through how this journey unfolded for you and what sparked your passion for this space?
Sure. So thank you, Vinny, and firstly, thanks for that wonderful introduction. And I'm really looking forward to this experience today. I hope I can respond to your questions with as much clarity as possible. But more importantly, I'm looking to learn from this experience myself. To begin with, I've had almost 12 years of experience. And I did my summers with the Mahindra Group and joined in the corporate HR role. I pursued tasks in talent management, diversity and inclusion, work with leaders to develop their functional talent. So that was almost 2 years of my career. And then I moved on to take up a role of sales and customer care HR. And I realized that whatever I had done, or conceptualized before that had very less perspective. So it's very important to start your career in HR, with a field HR role. So that gave me a lot of perspective around employee life cycle, around the business. And it was around this time, when I was working with learning and development itself, and there were training programs for our employees. I realized that there was such little relevance that those trainings had for employees on the field. And that kind of urged me to work with some of the regional business heads to curate some content which is customized for sales and customer care. And I did have a lot of foundational knowledge at that time for L&D, except for what I've done in my MBA. But I did whatever I could, and I became really passionate about it. So that was, the beginning of my passion and interest in L&D. And then something very interesting happened for me. So Mahindra kind of offered me a role outside of HR, core HR, and I moved into channel capability. So, the dealership network of the auto business. So I was part of that team. And it was very interesting because I was working very close to the business, working with, the manpower of the dealerships, developing capability, leadership capability, running assessment centers. We launched an online academy, a lot of hands-on work. And so this was another couple of years of my work with Mahindra, and then I was quite passionate about learning and development, and I decided to deep dive, and so I joined a consulting firm in L&D that is Focus You, and that's where I did a lot of instructional design work, worked with lots of customers from across industries, and did a lot of facilitation. So it was a very creative period of my career. And then I realized that learning in an organization originates from business needs and business KPIs, and the impact also goes back to the business. And when you are just in a consulting firm, it's very difficult to see the origin and the impact. Okay, and there are lots of factors impacting learning, how it happens, the impact, the employees at the center. So I wanted to come back to that level of complexity, and that's when I decided to move back to the industry, and that's what brought me back to Alivus Life Sciences, formerly Glenmark Life Sciences. So yeah, that's and here I head the learning and OB function, talent management. I look at functional learning. So yeah, that's a summary of my
That's a very
experience.
rich journey, like
Yeah.
so many different things. So, looking back on this part, I'm curious what have been some defining moments or challenges that have like shaped your perspective about learning and development?
Yeah. So I would say that the seeds of this passion were sown in a classroom like this. So back to my MBA days, and I remember attending classes of Professor Sriram and a session on L&D where he showed us a movie how to train your dragon. Okay, that's a movie, right, and still very popular. And we learned about different methodologies of training. Okay, and I remember a class on performance management system where we discussed like a Venn diagram of performance. How do you measure and what gets measured and the noise around performance. And I think those classes definitely sowed that seed around this. But later on, in my HRDP career, when I saw the gap between what learning offered and how it translated to performance on the ground, and that really energized me. Okay. And so when you know any movement in career, any shift in career comes from a place of unknown. So you know certain things, you master certain things, and there are certain things that you don't know. It's beyond your reach. So you have to, as an individual, you have to attend to that. You have to honor that, and you have to work towards that. Okay, so learning is a very, very uncomfortable and a very it's a difficult process. Okay, you enjoy it also from gaining those kind of skills, but you also have to go through the process. You have to study, you have to practice, you have to connect with experts, and that's what I did. So I anybody interested in pursuing a career in L&D, I strongly recommend this book, Map It by Kathy Moore. That's something that I read, practiced a lot, worked with a lot of experts, asked them for their feedback, and that's what I have grown from. Yeah. So, and it's never actually just a moment. It's a phase. It's a transition that happens. You realize you need to work towards something, and you have to put very intentional efforts towards it. So I was reading this book recently called Design Your Career by Dr. Pawan Soni, and he talks of careers in the form of inflection points. So you move towards a certain change, but you have to work towards those changes very intentionally, right? So yeah, that's the summary.
Hearing from your experiences, I realized that this field requires a lot of passion and resilience.
Yeah.
And learning and development is something which often operates in the backseat, despite having a massive impact. So, how you kept yourself motivated to stay in this field every single day?
But let me assure everyone before that a career in HR can be as glamorous as you want. Okay, so it does not need to be on the back end. So in my work of learning and development, so I get an opportunity to create and co-create a lot of moments of insight. Okay, so when you are in a debate, in a discussion, uh, when employees or learners are going through a process, okay, so there is a shift that happens, in their mindset, and you can actually see that in their eyes and their expressions and what they're talking about, and that moment is what I really, live for. Okay, so when that shift happens, it's really energizing for me. So that's one point, and the second point is there's a lot of creativity in the work. HR work is not mundane, and L&D is definitely not. So there are so many things to be creative with, with AI coming in, with the different methodologies, say, gamification, experiential learning. So there's a lot to experiment with. You can be very creative. So, of course, everything will not be successful, but the trick is in trying things out, seeing for yourself if that works or not. Okay. So that's the second thing I would say. And the other important thing is that in HR, you get to shape the consciousness of the organization. The individuals have consciousness, but the organization itself has a consciousness. And when you work on culture, you work on every single conversation, the interactions that happen, the behaviors that get demonstrated, the choices that get made in the organization, right? And when you are part, of course, you can't do it alone. You have to go with the system. You have to engage with the leadership to do that. But when you do that, it is very fulfilling. When you see even small changes that happen, I think that would be the third thing. I think the fourth thing is that the complexity of the problems that you get to solve. When you do your MBA, you see all these case studies, okay, but you do it in the classroom. But in the organization, you are right in the center of those problems. And for anybody who likes to solve those kind of problems, it's in HR, and it's a great place to be. Yeah, I think that pretty much summarizes what really energizes me.
Didi has highlighted the transformative impact of learning and development. But often one big hurdle is proving this impact to the business leaders. Many organizations struggle to kind of see the return on investment that comes from the learning initiatives. So how you design your development programs in a way that you get buy-in from the leadership?
So let me ask a question. So when you think about measuring impact of L&D interventions, what comes to your mind? You do it before or after?
After.
Yeah. So that's the catch. So when you think about impact of learning, it has to start before the program or before the journey. Okay. So it doesn't start. We don't do a learning intervention or a program and then say that how are we going to measure the impact of this. So the conversation starts at the beginning. So what problems are we solving for? What are those KPIs that need attention? Is it attrition? Is it the customer satisfaction scores? Number of safety incidents, the mistakes, the errors. So the conversation starts with impact. The design starts with impact. Okay. And so when you do that, actually, you don't have to really convince business stakeholders. Okay. So what we need to do is just stay curious. Okay. And act as a consultant, a performance consultant. Let me give a simple example. Say a child is finding it very difficult to write.
Yes.
Okay, so the outcome is that he or she should be able to say write the letters with their pencil. Now there could be. It's very easy to pinpoint that there is a problem in the ability of the child. Okay, so that requires training. But when you're a performance consultant, you look at everything that impacts performance. Could be the child is not well slept, or there is something at home which is troubling the child, or some issue with the child's sight and hence not able to follow instructions. So there are a lot of factors, and when you look at so as an L&D person, you have to look at performance. We don't just look at what training is required. Okay. So I'll give another example. Recently, I was discussing with one of our business heads, and he spoke about the need for a training in communication skills. Okay, and that is as vague as it gets. Okay, communication skills could be anything. Okay, it could be written, it could be email, it could be listening skills, anything. But only when you get into that mode of inquiry, uh, we you understand, okay, what is the core need. So this particular function is about submitting regulatory proposals. Okay, and in that, a very interesting thing is using the right tenses in the communication, written communication. Otherwise, there's a lot of back and forth in those submissions. So the final KPI here is that we do these submissions in the least amount of time. Okay, so keeping that business goal in mind, and then coming back to what skills are required. And of course, as I said, there could be a lot of other factors over and above the skills itself. So the summary is that we need to stay curious. We need to act as a performance consultant. Then it is not much about convincing.
So once these programs are in place, I believe the next challenge is to see how effective it is. So
Yes.
let us, how do you measure the effectiveness of these programs beyond the completion rates or the feedback forms?
Yeah. And I'll do that with an example. So, of course, as I said, that you start with the business KPIs that you want to change and you want to make an impact upon. So completion rates are one thing, and reaction level feedback. So at reaction level also, what I find is a metric like an NPS, which is a net promoter score,
Yes.
is a very good metric to measure reaction level. Okay. And then we measure at skill level. These have to be very carefully designed. Uh, you know, it could be situation judgment assessments. And if it's a functional knowledge, functional area, then the functional assessments, those have to be very well designed. And then we look at the actual performance back at work. So these could be through observations, manager feedback, peer feedback. And then finally, you look at whether it made an impact on the business KPIs. Now that is very tough because a business KPI is impacted by different factors. Okay. So let me give you an example. So we've been working on this one journey called Lead to Win. And the focus was to build these managerial capabilities at our frontline leaders, so that we improve our retention of our entry level talent. Okay, and and one very important thing in measuring impact is to also look at anecdotal evidence. Okay, so what I mean by that is you connect with these participants and these learners and understand from them that what is it that they are doing different. Okay, and what is it that they were doing earlier. How is it that What is it that they are doing differently now? What are they actively experimenting with, and what are those changes that they're doing? So what are they doing very deliberately, very consciously? So these anecdotal evidences are very powerful in terms of showing impact. Okay, because these are real stories from the ground. So for this particular program, we looked at situation judgment assessments. So these participants attempted various scenarios. How would they respond? We looked at the pre and the post. So this was from just a learning point of view. But we also took very detailed feedback from their managers. And since this was about managerial skills, we got the HR folks to talk to their teams to see what are these participants doing differently. So that gave us a lot of feedback. And then finally, we have an engagement metric in our organization that we measure in our continuous listening. So that's around manager guidance. So we kind of tracked that, and we saw a shift in that also. So this is a multi-pronged approach that you have to follow in measuring impact.
That makes a lot of sense, especially in today's fast-paced workplaces.
Yeah.
Where employees are juggling with so many things.
Yeah.
So that brings me to my next question, that employees often rush through their mandatory learning programs because of the respective workloads they have. So how do learning and development teams ensure that they respect the time of the employee while also maintaining a genuine knowledge retention?
This is very important, okay, because um, attention is just getting shorter and shorter. It is becoming more precious, and time is of essence. So how do you really work around these? Like if you have even say 20-25 participants, okay, and they are attending a training, which say a full day workshop, and they don't find value in it, there's a massive cost, okay, and not just their time in the training that is a waste, but also the opportunity cost because they are away from their work, right? So it is going to impact whatever the customer interactions, anything that they have to, the projects that they are working on. So it's a massive cost. So what we focus on here is how do you design the training in such a way that it completely replicates their work. So what I mean by this is traditionally training has been very knowledge oriented. So there is an instructor who is who is giving instruction, talking about the frameworks, talking about the SOPs, the steps, etc. Okay. What we need to move towards is a format where people just practice. And what I mean by that is, say you are teaching a manager how to do an appraisal conversation, okay, and you show them through slides, how to do that, okay. Back at the workplace, nobody is going to ask the manager that, can you tell me the 3 steps to do an appraisal conversation? Or even functionally, in our in our plants, we have these massive equipments, okay. And if the training just focuses on the SOP, the steps, okay, nobody back at the plant is going to actually ask them, okay, can you tell me, okay, what are the 5 steps? So they actually have to operate those equipments. The manager has to have an actual conversation with the employee, right? And so the training must replicate that. Okay, so that's important. So the training must create those scenarios, those practice activities for that participant to actually have those conversations, for that operator to actually practice on those equipments and understand where they're making mistakes. So the classroom has to be a very safe environment to make mistakes because without mistakes, we can't learn. And an opportunity to get feedback from the trainer, from experts, from the peers, and you learn. And anything that we do, there are some steps which are a little easier, some steps which are more complex, where we falter more often. And the training has to ensure that the design has to ensure that in the classroom, uh, we are able to bring those parts of the skill, okay, where people then get to practice. So what happens is then the knowledge or the information becomes secondary. Okay, you provide it as just an aid, okay, or it is something that the participants can do in their own time. Okay, and everybody learns at different paces. So that is something that you give as a pre-read, as a support document that somebody finishes at other times. But in the classroom, it is all about practice. And when this practice and the design is very relevant and it's very engaging, then it is highly unlikely that anybody is going to feel that it was of no use. Okay? So that's how we maximize. How do you make it extremely relevant? How do you make it practice oriented so that people go back feeling very confident about what they have done?
I believe all the designs that you mentioned, their focus is to improve the engagement with the employees. So, coming to the experience of the employees, I want to understand that one of their very first experience that sets the tone of the journey, onboarding. So, how do you make sure that onboarding is not just compliance led, but it's something which actually makes them feel connected and makes them ready to perform?
So Vinny, if I may ask, like, what do you think is the objective of an onboarding program?
To set the culture of the organization, make employee a part of it.
Yeah. See, there are two basic purposes. Okay, so one is that how do you get the employee to perform at the earliest possible? Okay, so you get them ready at the earliest possible. Okay, so that there is minimal lead time. So if they're getting ready in 6 months, how do you make it 3 months?
Yes.
That is one. And the second very important thing is that how do you create a sense of belongingness? Belongingness to the team, to the culture, to the organization. And what this does is both of these together is when a new employee feels connected to the organization, feels capable enough to do what they were hired for. So they feel that confidence to be in that organization. They get those small wins, right? And so there is a higher chance that they continue with the organization. So they overcome that initial. So that's the purpose of an onboarding. Okay. So when you look at onboarding, you have to look at multiple pillars. You have to look at their organization connect, whether they understand the role. Do they have a connection with the values of the organization? And when you have to achieve these objectives, there are lots of ways to do that, and you can get as creative as possible. So, for example, say if you talk about role client, okay. Now, in my organization, we hire chemistry graduates, as I said, to operate these equipments. These are massive reactors and centrifuges, and these are something that these these operators, if they are fresh graduates, they would not have ever worked on. So what we have is we have these sim labs, or we call them simulation labs, at each of our plants, okay, and where there are like mini reactors, okay, and everything that we need in the plant. So we get these new joiners to actually go through the process, but also practice hands-on. Okay, so that helps them to go to the shop floor with a lot of confidence. So that's one. Another example from my previous organization, Focus U. So Focus U was very culture focused. So it had these values called CHOPS: care, humility, ownership, passion, and safety. So it meant so much to them. And then when we had new joiners, so the founders and the senior most leaders, they would have these conversations with new employees and talk to them about the stories in the organization about each of these values. Okay, so these stories were held really close. Okay, and so this is how you set the benchmark that when you are in a similar situation, a new joiner, how are you expected to handle the situation, and how do you use the values as a guiding framework? So this is another example of a great practice that I've seen. And I was talking to you about organization connect. Okay, so here again I have a very fond memory from my Mahindra days. So when we joined the management training program, we had this 45 days onboarding program where we visited some touch point from each of the businesses. It could be an auto dealership, even Club Mahindra Resort, so it was or a component manufacturing site. So it was very interesting. And one of the objectives was that how do you understand the real customer of the Mahindra Group who is in rural India? So we actually spent 2 weeks in different towns and villages of India. So my team was in Udaipur, and we did this 2-week project understanding the impact of government schemes on education and learning outcomes. So it is very interesting because you get such an important um, understanding of the customer of the organization, and also that belief that the organization is investing in you in such a massive way for you to learn. So these are the variety of things that you can do. You can get creative. Of course, the mandatory trainings and all of that is there, but to be able to get people to start delivering in their roles and to create that sense of connect with the values, with the organization's aspirations, these are some of the ways that.
You mentioned about organizations investing into employees. So there are so many emerging technologies out there, and it can get very overwhelming for the organization. So I want to understand, how do you decide that what tools and practices we are adopting, and what parameters do you use to evaluate them?
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of innovation happening all the time in this space. So it can get very overwhelming at times. So the way I see it, firstly, what I do is I try to keep an outside-in approach. Okay, so if I see certain things emerging, I try to get a sense of that, a demonstration of that. There are also a lot of industry conferences that happen where you can participate, you can understand what is happening. So that's very important because what you learn in the classroom becomes irrelevant very soon. So it's very important to keep yourself updated. To read, that's also another way. Now, once you have all of these things in place, you have an understanding of what is emerging. You have to see what is the evidence behind it, what is the context behind it. Will that work for your context? So I'll give you an example. So micro learning is something that a lot of people talk about. Okay, so micro learning is learning in bites, and you learn anytime, anywhere. So that's what it is all about. It's easy to design, easy to scale up. Um, when I was working with the Mahindra Group, so we launched online academy for our dealership employees, and that was completely based on micro learning. So we had these bite-sized modules on the different products, okay, and we made it very creatively and very engaging. We had a lot of we had very fast adoption, and people could access it anytime, anywhere, right, across India. If you just have a smartphone in the dealership, you can learn. Uh, back to my current organization at Alivus. Okay, so we are in a chemical factory. Okay, where mobile is a safety hazard. Okay, so you can't really utilize something like that. So the context matters. As a learning practitioner, you might be very tempted to try something very innovative, but you have to see the context in which it will really work. So whether it comes with a lot of evidence, um, and the another way to see it is that uh, does the technology actually help you replicate the work context of the employees? So when I say this, so right now artificial intelligence has given us this opportunity to use AI bots to actually practice some of the skills. If you see, it's very very relevant because say if I want to practice having a difficult conversation. Okay, and if I have an AI bot with whom I can practice that with customized scenarios and the context is customized, it's a very good use case. So here's an example where it actually helps you simulate the work environment much better and helps you scale it at the same time. So yeah, this is how you look at the evidence. You look at the context in which it is going to work. Is it going to be easy for you to scale? Can you invest in something like that? Can you start with a smaller prototype? That's something that I do a lot. If we have to scale something new to a very big audience, can we first start with say a cohort of 20 folks or something? So that's how I would approach it.
Understood. So, Diti, throughout the conversation, you gave us many examples of immersive learning.
Yeah.
I want to understand, how was your learning curve in this career? Also, what does a career progression looks like for someone who is aspiring to grow in the field of learning and development?
Yeah. So I think it's very important that anyone who's starting up their career in this field, and irrespective of whether you want to go the pathway of HRBP or a COE pathway, it's very important to start your career with an HRBP role. Okay, and because that gives you a complete end-to-end view of the employee life cycle, of the business. Okay, how different HR processes are aligned to the business. It's very important for us to embed ourselves in the business. So understand where the money comes from. How does it come from? How do we lose money? How do we lose customers? Okay, and that is very important. And hence, the first thing that you should do, that I suggest, is go for an HRBP role at the beginning of your career. So at least 3-4 years before you decide to pivot to a COE. And if it's a learning and development COE, for me it happened, because I developed some interest, while I was in the HRBP role. A more intentional way to do that would be to build your expertise in instructional design. So when I say instructional design, it means actually designing learning experiences or training material, designing assessments. Okay, how do you measure impact? So all of that, and that is a big science in itself, a big skill in itself. So for me, that was a major turning point. I did my instructional design training with Vijayalakshmi Vishwanathan, and it was a very intense process. Understanding how do you learn, how do you write learning objectives aligned to the business, using Bloom's taxonomy and other frameworks, and then how do you translate it into design? Okay, the training design and the assessments. So, and you have to have a lot of opportunities to practice that. So you create a lot of training materials, you design, it could be within the organization, or if you're on the consulting side, then you design for customers. So for me, choosing to go for a consulting organization in learning was one option, and that's something that anybody who's interested in L&D can consider, but it's not mandatory. But what is important is to learn instructional design. That is for sure. And that requires a lot of discipline, lots of detail orientation, understanding of the business, ability to speak and discuss with subject matter experts. So all of those skills. So you have to build the depth and you have to build the breadth. So instructional design is the depth of L&D. And then it's important to understand the other functions that work in tandem to L&D. Okay, so it's important to take up some of those roles, because learning and L&D doesn't happen in isolation. Okay, what you get to do in learning is sometimes the outcome of what is happening in talent management. Okay, so it's important to take up some of these roles, which are in talent management, which are in organization development. So you get a very holistic view of how learning happens, how learning gets impacted, how learning gets transferred to the organization. So the suggestion is start with HRBP before pivoting to a COE. And if L&D is your choice of COE, then you must go for the breadth and the depth of the subject.
So for our listeners, especially those who are preparing for their final placements, and they are interested in human resources or learning and development particularly, what skills, experiences, or mindset you think they should focus on so they can stand out?
So, the placement process, be it the finals or the summers, is a very stressful process, right? You're going through several rounds. Sometimes there are rejections, so it's a very challenging time, right? So it's very difficult to come up with a lot of answers, solutions in that frame of mind. So the most important thing for us is to prepare, okay? And it's also, and how do you prepare? You have to understand what is it that the organizations are looking for. So irrespective of the organization, irrespective of the values and the competencies, there are certain things that they prioritize when they look at hiring management trainings.
Okay.
So these would be things like learning orientation, ownership, passion. So these are some of the things that they will prioritize. Okay, and that's what their selection process centers around. So keeping these things at the center, how do you prepare for it? So what I recommend is that you create a very detailed, Excel with all the experiences that you've had. So it could be your prior work experience, it could be your summer internship, it could be the competitions that you've worked with. If you're part of a committee, those, or if you have certain passions that you pursue, it could be exercise, it could be anything, music, etc. So put all of these at a single place, okay, and put them in a format. You could use a star format: situation, task, action, result. So, okay, what is the detail of the situation, the scenario, what had to be achieved, what were your contributions? So that are the actions and the results. So put everything in at a single place. Okay. And sometimes all of these would not be things that you've been successful on, but you've tried. Okay. What organizations are looking for is someone who can learn from these experiences, willing to experiment, iterate, uh, willing to take those learnings and apply in future projects. So it's okay if things that you've done they are not successful, but if you have attempted, so please put them in one place and see and map them to the competencies that organizations are looking for. So as I said, learning orientation, ownership, passion. Okay, and be so conversant with these examples that it's very easy for you to come up with these when you are at an interview. Like for example, when it comes to passion, so it's very important, and since you are in an academic environment, okay, what are some of those subjects that you're really passionate about? And if you're passionate about a particular subject, so are there any particular frameworks that you could relate to? You have studied that, you have kind of thought about it, experimented with. So can you talk about these? Like for example, say if you're passionate about performance management, okay, and a typical question would be around, say, balance scorecard. So can you apply a balance scorecard in a real life situation with a very simple example, say a coffee shop or something? Okay, so this ability to step out of just the framework and apply your understanding in various situations, so that indicates that how passionately you have thought about the subject and the framework. So yeah, that's very important. If there are group discussions, case studies, I think you need to be mentally prepared for that. Like, what is your approach? What is it that you're good at? Like, if you are somebody who can come up with original thoughts, then that's what you stick to. Okay, if you are somebody who's very good with theory and frameworks, so that's the value that you bring in the conversation. If you are somebody who can build on what the others are saying, combining ideas, that's what you need to do. But for that, you need to identify what you are good at. So, in practice discussions, etc., you need to identify, uh, what is it that you're bringing to the conversation, and hone it and strengthen. Yeah. So yeah, these are some of the suggestions.
So that brings us to the end of this discussion. It was an absolute pleasure to have you here and learn from your wealth of experiences. And to our listeners, we hope that this conversation will bring a lot of valuable insights about the evolving world of learning and development. And once again, thank you for your contribution.
Thank you. Thanks, Vinny. It was wonderful interacting with you. A very meaningful experience for me as well. And I must say that the questions were, very, very thoughtful. So thanks for that. Thank you so much.